just want a little bit of advice on how you'd go about fixing that, addressing that, and I'll answer them in these here. We've also got a bunch of questions that have come out of our client group over the course of a week, so we're good. Morning, Lillian. Morning, Jacinta. Morning, Karen. Look at this, Catherine and Stacy and all of this. Hey, guys. How are you guys? Lovely. Oh, Kirsten. We should chat, by the way, Kirsten. I was thinking about you the other day, just with the whole SIBO thing. I think we should chat about that. Anyway, do digress. Best calorie tracking app, Nell says. For me, it's just got to be MyFitnessPal. I don't think it's because it's the best. I think it's just because it's the easiest to use and it's the most common to use to get started. Once you start progressing into more deeper tracking, then perhaps you might go to something a little bit more complicated or a little bit more extensive. But I think just for the purpose of what we need, yeah, I think that's it. Okay, so Bonnie says, my calories and protein increased since becoming elite. Does this mean I'm in a reverse? Well, I'm very glad you asked that question, Bonnie, and it's really important that you should understand what this means, okay? What is a reverse diet? A reverse diet is just simply what it sounds like. It is, instead of decreasing your calories, it is increasing your calories. Now, given probably that the majority of people that are tuning into this Q&A want to lose weight, why would you want to increase your calories? Let's just actually address this because I think it's a very good question. Why would you want to increase your calories? In fact, when you start increasing your calories, it is extremely scary, right? Because you've just been trained to eat less calories. Why would you want to increase your calories? That doesn't make any sense, right? Well, here's the reason why. If you've already gone through a period of time where you have lowered your calories, well, then you can't just infinitely keep lowering your calories forever, because what's going to happen is you're going to get to a point where you have no calories left. Does that make sense? So what we need to do when you're kind of getting to that point of low calories, or Bonnie, if you had chronic dieting for a long period of time, we need to go through what's called a reverse diet. And a reverse diet is when we slowly bring up our calories, okay? I will clarify, in a reverse diet, you are not expecting to lose more weight. It can happen, but you're not expecting to lose more weight. What we're trying to do is get you back to a calorie position that you can do a future cut. Does this make sense? So very rarely does a person go from normal eating and then lose 30 kilos and be at their target goal. That just doesn't happen very often at all. What ends up happening is it takes some loops of decreasing our calories and increasing calories. And the reason for it is that you can't just keep cutting forever, okay? So yes, that is a reverse diet, Bonnie, and I encourage you to just kind of continue to ask questions, particularly on the elite call, so that you really, really get your head around this. It is scary at the start because increasing calories is the exact opposite of what you've been told to do your entire life, right? So that's really, really important. Is it true, Div says, that the first 2 to 4 days, the weight loss is not fat loss, but body build loss causes weight? No. In the first few days of a weight loss journey, Div, basically what it will be is you'll lose a lot of water. And that is because predominantly, if you're cutting down on your carbohydrates, you're going to lose a lot of water because carbohydrates get stored in our muscles with water. So if you cut down on the carbohydrates, you also lose the water weight. Does that make sense, guys? Hopefully that's a simple enough explanation. So yes, that's why at the start, like the very first few days, typically what people do is reduce the carbohydrate intake, and we're pretty supportive of that idea. That's how we do it. And what will happen is your overall weight will come down a little bit quicker. Okay, so good morning, Vicky, and what do we got? 2 Vickies and Lynn. How are you guys? All right, so Sam has a question. I have a question. This weekend, I have 3 meals out at restaurants and would like to know how to manage this in my meal plan calories. Saturday dinner, Sunday lunch, and Sunday dinner. I love this question, okay? This is really, really important because, Sam, rather than you being a social hermit and not going to the dinner, which is what so many people do on a transformation journey, right? They just that just stay inside. Like, is that going to work for the rest of your life? Just staying inside? That's not going to work. You need to be able to go to a restaurant and plan it. So the few tips. Now, if you've got tips that you can give, Sam, pop them into the comments. But here's the way that I would go about this. Number one, I would have a look at the menu that you're going in advance. Okay. So this gives you an idea to be able to study a little bit of what you could have. So that's the first thing. Look at the menu in advance if you know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, that's fine. The general rule that you want to have, Sam, is when you eat out, let me talk about the 3 different things that you kind of got to watch out for, right? Number one is, what is the food itself? Is the food a whole food? Okay, that's the first thing. Or is it a lasagna? The difference between a steak and a lasagna, as an example. You're going to be better to go for the steak nearly every single time. So is it a whole food or not at its base? I would always, when I'm eating out, I would always choose, for example, the fish and vegetables, or the chicken and salad, or the so. See how it's a whole food matched with a pairing, right? If you're having something like a carbonara or a laksa, or just depending on where you're eating, if it's not a whole food, if it's a recipe-based food, it's generally going to be worse. So that's the first level. The second level is, how is it cooked? Okay, how is it cooked? Anything that is grilled is generally going to be good. Anything that's barbecued is generally going to be good. Yeah, they might add fats, but that's the idea. Anything that's deep fried, right, or wok fried in a restaurant, it's going to be a lot of oil that's being added to it. Okay, so the first level is it a whole food? The second level is, how's it cooked? Now the third level is, what's added to it, right? What's added to it? So, for example, your beautiful grilled steak from the pub, a lot of the times what gets added to that is a shit ton of butter. So it's actually cooked perfectly, right? And it's paired with a nice salad. What gets added to it? Shit ton of butter. And that's the issue, right? So for me, what I would personally do, let's just say you're going out to a pub for the Saturday night dinner. What I would do is I would say, okay, is it a whole food? I'm choosing the fish, the chicken, or the steak. Something like that is what I'm choosing. Next, how's it cooked? Is it cooked grilled? Well, a steak doesn't get deep fried, so yes, it's cooked grilled. And the third thing I'm going to say is, can you not add any butter? That's what I do. And then from a calorie perspective, I allow myself 1,000 calories for that meal. Okay, which basically means going into the meal, Sam, given your calorie target of sitting there between sort of 1,600 and 2,000 calories, you want to be probably doing a morning fast, okay, or a lunchtime fast, or eating smaller meals during the morning. You could, for example, have a protein shake when you wake up. You could have just a light chicken wrap or something like that at lunchtime. And then when you go into the actual restaurant, you've got ample amounts of wiggle room. And for the record, I wouldn't bother tracking don't try to track that meal. Just put it in as 1,000 calorie meal, right? And just say, that's it. I'm not going to over infatuate. Does that help, Sam? Just let me know if that helps, because this is a really good and common question. Okay, so next one is, and you would just repeat that, by the way, Sam, for the rest of your meals. Same thing applicable to lunch, right? You know, if you're going to have this massive half of avocado, like that's just going to add a lot of calories. So I personally would maybe order that with 3 eggs, and then I'd personally just remove 2/3 of the avocado. That's what I would do. And it's simply because it's just really easy to consume whatever's on the plate. But then I think about like the amount of, I don't want to have to think about that in terms of calories. I just know the better choices. And again, Sam, this will become way easier as you start to get awareness what's in food. So Catherine says, is it better to keep the same resistance band strength for form, even though the movement is almost too easy, or switch to the next strength up, but the movement and the form is not quite there? Example, on an arm extension, I can go full movement on the lightest band, but I can't on a stronger band. Hope that makes plenty of sense. That's a really, really good question, Catherine. And so the way you want to play it, I described this in I think it was a Q&A the other day, is the correct way to do progressive overload is this. Let's say the program says 10 repetitions, right? What you want to do is you want to, whatever weight that you're lifting, so that the easy band, call it, you want to keep doing repetitions until you can get that to like 10, 11, 12 repetitions at the easy band, maybe 13 repetitions at the easy band. And once you can do that, and you cannot get another repetition out at 12 or 13, like you're actually, right? So now is the time to increase the weight. That's when you would change the band weight, right? Now, what that means is that when you do the heavier band, right, what's going to happen is your repetitions is going to drop. It's like a seesaw. The repetitions are going to drop. And when the repetitions drop, guess what? It's because it's getting harder. And now what we're hoping to happen is that your strength adapts, and it will. You keep working out. You might start at 8 repetitions. Then the next week you can do 9 repetitions. The next week you can do 10 repetitions. If you go back and listen to the podcast that Zach and I did last week together, you'll notice very, very clearly that this whole progressive overload thing is the thing that keeps so many people stuck. They just do the same thing over and over again and nothing changes. Why would it change? Nothing would change if you don't increase the difficulty, the challenge to the muscle. The muscle is just, it's just that your strength is just an adaptation that's happening because of what you're doing. So if what you're doing can easily be done, there is no change. Okay, so that's a very, very, very good question. A great answer to eating out, the meal dilemma. Yeah, 100%. I might actually put a guide together on this because there's plenty of places. I've got a guide for you guys as clients that you can go to in our guide section that you can find to eat out. But I think one that actually just like kind of guides the concept first is a very good idea. Like not takeaway, actually eating out. Guys, if you have any other questions that you want to ask, you can bang them into the comments and I will freely answer anything you've got. It's a little bit hard to keep pace on Insta because it moves down so quickly. Good morning to everyone that's just joined. Any other questions that you guys want to ask live, you can bang them into the comments. Now, I'm going to deal with this question that is, I really do hope that this is taken the right way, and I might make this into a post. Is Reformer Pilates adequate for strength training? Okay, is Reformer Pilates adequate for strength training? This is such a common question, and it's almost as common as is collagen good as a protein? Here's what happens. Reformer Pilates and collagen gets hyper marketed to women, right? Men, I don't have any men asking me if they can have collagen protein. I don't have any men asking me if they can do Reformer Pilates as their main thing, right? That's not criticism. That's just, they might be interested in it, but it's not the big thing. This is like, it's like the feminized way to market to women. I just want to really be honest with you guys. Like what works for men in terms of stimulus works for women as well, right? It's the same thing. Now the delivery might be different, but it's the same thing. So let's talk about this Reformer Pilates. So if you're not familiar with it, I've actually, now I'm going to put my hand up and say I've never done a session, okay? But I know very well about it. And part of the reason that I have never done a session is because for me, it's not the type of adaptation that I'm trying to create, okay? So it's a sliding carriage that has springs and straps and a foot bar, and it creates some resistance, okay? Now, the focus of a Reformer Pilates session is stability. It's really good for stability. It's really good for posture. If you have back and mobility issues, joint issues, it's extremely good. Okay, this is good. If you have discomfort generally from sitting in seats all day, extremely good. If you have injured yourself, it's a low impact way to get back in. And a lot of people who do reformer Pilates, what they'll say is that, oh yeah, but you can turn the resistance up. Yeah, I get it. I get it. And I don't ever think that telling someone who loves something to do it, like that's, if you told me stop doing the gym, do cardio, well, I wouldn't do that because I love the gym regardless of the other components to it. But I think it's really important that we do understand that it is not a like for like replacement. You don't do either reformer Pilates or strength or traditional strength training. You do both. And I would suggest doing more of the resistance training relative to the Pilates. And here's the reason why. When we're doing real strength training, like dumbbells, resistance training, barbells, machines, these are the big rocks for men and women in midlife. Muscle mass preservation, right? You're just not going to force the same stimulus in a reformer Pilates session as doing traditional strength training. Bone density, your metabolism strength, again, coming off the back of building more muscle, and just the strength for daily life. Reformer Pilates is going to give you some excellent functionality and mobility. And I would encourage you to do that stuff, especially if you love it. But it's not a direct like for like comparison. And the reason usually is just too little load to build any significant muscle. The forces on the bones are not heavy enough to start to protect against osteoporosis, bone degradation, and muscle mass loss. That's why we have to do traditional strength training. Now, I'm saying that kind of like somewhat delicately because I understand that it is popular, but there is a place for it. It's just not a replacement. Okay, does that make sense? Catherine says, thanks for the podcast suggestion, and we'll definitely move in on strength band. Yeah, I can go beyond 15 reps now on some arm exercises. Well, that's it. If the program that we've given you, Kath, says, 10 to 12, we definitely want to start to reel it in a bit. Yeah, get those back into check, 100%. I've started using reformer Pilates on a couple of days that I don't lift for mobility and recovery. And that's exactly how I would insert it, Lyndall. I think that's the smartest way to insert it as a supplement to your resistance training. Great idea, like extremely great idea. Okay, guys, if you have any questions that you want to ask, you can bang them into the comments and I will try my best to answer them. So a doctor says how to fix an injury with food. You can't fix an injury with food, my brother. It won't happen. There's got to be a rehab and mobility component to fixing an injury. And so you certainly want to have good food, right? If your protein's way too low, then you can't do the repair job, but you're not going to be able to just eat a food and think that you're going to heal a broken leg. Like, it doesn't work like that. I've been going to the gym for nearly 2 years, but my belly fat has still not reduced. Any suggestions? Yeah, dude, I got plenty of suggestions. Everyone wants to target the belly fat, and I kind of get it, right? We don't want that hanging around the front, because when we go and look in the mirror and when someone sees us, it's the first thing we and they see, right? So totally get it, but you can't target it, right? You can't say, I'm going to lose that belly fat, and what do I need to do? Nothing will work. What will work is, okay, I need a general body fat loss plan. If I can reduce my overall body fat percentage, hopefully what will happen is at a certain point in time, which is going to depend on my genetics, my gender, my hormones, my age, it will leave my belly. So we have some girls and guys who the belly is just luckily the first place that they start to lose weight. We have other girls and guys where they literally get like super skinny in the face before they ever get defined abs, so to speak, right? So there's a reason for that. You have some receptors in and around your belly that are they kind of grab the fat quickly, particularly if you're very stressed, right? And you don't do much exercise or you drink a lot of alcohol. Like you're going to store a lot of belly fat. So if you want to get rid of your belly fat, which is what most people want, you can't target it, but you've got to think to yourself, all right, kind of like how you can't just go and scoop water out of the deep end of the pool. That doesn't work. You got to empty the whole pool, right? You can't just choose where you're going to scoop the water from. Does that make sense? You can't choose to lose belly fat from here or thighs or wherever it is that you want to lose it, but you can lose body fat. And once you start to lose body fat, the body will pull it from all different areas. As much as it'd be cool if you could actually choose, and the person that actually can find a way to do that is going to be very, very rich, but there is no way to target it. No way to target it short of specific liposuction and that type of stuff. Guys, any other questions that you want me to answer live? I'll go to a few here. What's the easiest way to add protein without more cooking? That's a great question. Well, the simple answer to that is you can add more protein through snacking on high protein foods. Okay? So what are those high protein foods going to be? Think about the things that I have the most of that are high protein. Low fat yogurt. Like every time I eat yogurt, I'm like, how the hell is this so low in calories for the amount of protein? Like it's just so good. And these puddings, like Paul's in Australia, these puddings that Paul's is coming out with, the puddings and the Banoffee high protein yogurts, they're unbelievably tasty. They're so good, so high in protein, so low in calories. So without cooking, you insert high protein snacks like low calorie yogurt, low fat yogurt, low calorie puddings, beef jerky, things, for example, we ran into in Queensland here, one of the local shopping centers sells biltong. Super lean biltong, like amazing, the best. So it's getting in snacks like cottage cheese. You can add it to your salads. And then if you have a yogurt, you can put a scoop of protein in it to go with it. That's what you want to do. I've got some fools that come into these videos, Jesus Christ. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. So you don't have to cook to add protein is the point. Okay, what can I replace comfort eating with that actually works? Oh, that's such a tough question to answer. What can I replace comfort eating with that actually works? I reckon a lot of people would love the answer to that question, right? Because let's face it, we're not carrying weight because we want to. It's not like I want to get fat. It doesn't work like that. We have generally comfort eaten our way into putting on weight, right? Would anyone disagree with that? It's pretty obvious. So then what do we do about that? Well, we could try to change the things that we comfort ourselves and soothe ourselves with. Absolutely, we can. That's part of it. But for me, it really comes down to getting to the root of the problem. So if there's a comfort eating issue there, or comfort eating sounds nice, I think it's probably more likely an emotional eating issue. Like, what do you actually do? How do you change that? You've got to get better at dealing with the thing that's stressing you and making you emotional. And if you continue to ignore it, nothing changes, right? It's how do I deal with this thing? And I was told something once, which was like, in any given circumstance, for something that's stressing you, you have a very limited number of options. You can either do something about it or fully accept it. So let's say that you've got a relative in your family that triggers the shit out of you, and every time you spend time with that person, you just comfort eat, emotionally eat. Okay, what can you do? Well, you can either do something about it. Now, doing something about it might be just cut the person off. Stop putting your hand in the fire. That's one thing you can do. Or totally accept that this person triggers you and they're annoying and you do it anyway, and then just deal with the consequences. Don't complain, don't fight it, just accept it. And that gave me a rationale to be able to kind of work out how to deal with difficult situations. I think a lot of the time we we just keep putting our hand back in the fire again and then wondering why we continue to comfort eat. And we try to change what we eat, but the reality is it's the trigger that's causing the issue. So if you are a comfort eater, rather than sort of thinking to yourself, I've got to stop doing this. Well, yes, that's part of it, but you've actually got to interrupt the pattern that keeps happening way earlier on. Wouldn't you agree? It's like, I've got to stop this thing from happening at the source. And if you can do that, you're going to be a lot more successful. Of course, we can then replace habits. We can replace the way we're soothing ourselves for sure. But for me, a lot of the time, it's just easier to address the root cause. Time for a couple of extra questions, guys. Is fat loss actually harder after 40? Or is that just a myth? It feels harder. Yeah. I don't think, okay, so let's talk with facts here. Is fat loss actually harder after 40? Well, in most cases, yes, for individuals, because your metabolism has slowed down and you have less muscle and less activity than you were when you were 20, as an example. So yes, it's harder because the things that cause fat loss, better eating, well, maybe not so. You might be eating better, but most importantly, movement and muscle. Movement and muscle. The things that cause fat loss, you probably have less of after 40 than when you were 20. Would you agree? Now, why does that happen? Well, part of it's a choice. Part of it might be mobility issues. Might be because you actually gain weight so you move less. It's the career, it's the kids, it's all the things. But if you were to account for all of those things, can a person manage their weight over 40? Absolutely. You've just got to do the things that actually keep the weight off. So they're going to be the same things that you did to keep the weight off when you were younger. I'm starting to notice the amount of food my kids are eating, and they're 3 and 5, right? And you think to yourself, how on earth are they eating this amount of food and not getting fat? And they're not. Well, the simple answer is what? They just constantly run all day. If you constantly ran or walked all day, guess what? You wouldn't have a weight problem as well. But that's generally not practical. We have to sit down and do some work. We have to drive the kids to school, right? So people are like, why is it that a kid can consume so many calories and I can't? Because relative to their total body weight, they've got a lot of muscle mass and they're running around. So they've got a big car, a big engine, and they drive it lots, and that burns lots of calories. We, when we get older, relative to our body weight, typically have a low muscle mass, which means a slower metabolism, and we don't drive very much, right? And that's before we even talk about the food. So is it harder to lose fat? Yeah, it is, mostly because of life circumstances. And then, of course, when we're going through things like a drop in testosterone level and a drop in our estrogen level, associated with menopause, it gets harder, definitely gets harder. But that doesn't mean that you can't do anything about it. So what can you do? Well, you could go down the line of, obviously, therapies around hormones. That's a pretty important part of it. But you've also got to try to overcome your lifestyle and start doing things that actually burn more calories and lead you to eat less. Does that make sense? Like, that might all sound very factual, but there's a reason. Okay, guys, we've got time for one more question, and then we're going to finish this one off. What does a normal day of eating look like for fat loss? Great question. Okay. A normal day of eating for fat loss is going to look like very different days for me. Okay. It's going to look like, number one, me eating in a calorie deficit most of the times. That's going to require me to know how many calories I'm eating. Right now, I could do the things that contribute to a calorie deficit, which are, for example, eating higher protein diet, eating whole foods. I can do those things. But in most cases, if I'm going to go through a cut period where I'm actively trying to lose belly fat, lose body fat, I'm going to track my calories, because I know that even for me as a dietitian, calories get out of control very quickly. And we are really bad as humans at understanding how many calories we're eating. So trying to get on top of that is the first point, right? That's the first point in every time. Now, what foods you decide to put into that calorie allowance each day is completely up to you. It's completely up to you. As long as you're hitting your protein target and you're not going over your calorie target, you're going to be there. You're going to be there and thereabouts. So what does a healthy day look like? I'll run through a day for me. I would have 6 coffees over the course of a day on very low fat milk. I would then have some egg whites as a scramble in the morning with a couple of pieces of ham and a piece of toast and some spinach or avocado, generally every morning, okay? I will then have 2 protein bars generally over the course of a day. I'll then generally have a banana at some point and a packet of beef jerky. At lunchtime, it'll be something like a chicken salad or a pork salad, something like that. In the afternoon, I might have another snack, maybe another piece of fruit. And when I get to dinner, it's going to be, meat and potato style job. Grilled steak, grilled chicken, something like that, with a shit ton of veggies and a carb like rice, pasta, potato, something like that. Then at nighttime, I'll have a dessert nearly every night, and it's going to be a low-fat yogurt or a low-fat pudding or some berries and yogurt, something to that effect. So it's not like I'm eating a little amount of food. There's a lot of food. But this is what happens when you can reduce the amount of processed foods that you actually have in your diet. Hopefully that helps. And last question, Rod says, is half a chocolate whey scoop, baking powder, oats powder, and an egg a healthy lunch? Take your time to answer. So is half a chocolate whey, so half a scoop of whey protein, baking powder is basically nothing. Oats powder, don't really know what that is, but if you're just talking about like microwave oats, and an egg a healthy lunch, yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. It's going to sound like, okay, so half a scoop of whey is going to be like 70 calories and 15 grams of protein. You're adding in an egg, that's another 70 calories and another 6 grams of protein. So you're up to 20 odd grams of protein with about 220 calories before you add in the oats powder, whatever oats powder is. I'm assuming it's going to be 100 or 200 calories on top. So you're talking about a 300 to 400 calorie meal with probably 25 grams of protein. I would make it a full scoop of whey protein to try to get the protein level up in that dish. That's probably what I would do there. But otherwise, yep, it seems pretty cool. But again, looking at any one food is not that important. We've got to instead, Rods, we've got to look at the entire day, right? That's what actually matters. Okay, guys, hopefully this has been a little bit helpful, if not a reminder on a few key points this morning. I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful start to the morning. And as always, if you're struggling with anything, shoot us a DM and we'll take it from there.